Welcome everyone to the Thursday morning webinar series. Jon Taylor has another edition of the maturity in relationships. I've been finding this super interesting and helpful and thought-provoking. So I appreciate you doing all of the digging and research to bring this to us. So what are you sharing with us today?
Yeah, so we're gonna, it's still in the series, but we're gonna pause on specific theories. And there's actually a conversation I had with a client this week that I got their permission to share a bit of this conversation that we had because I thought it was really, it was a good summary, not just of the series, but I think the whole topic of my webinars over the last 7 years. So I wanted to share some of that. This woman that I was meeting with, she's at that age where she's experiencing the change. Menopause is starting, and she opened the session talking about how rough it's been. And she said, "I'm trying to do some research and I'm trying to learn." And she said, "My understanding is the other side of this, like life is good, and can even feel better in some ways than before." But she said, this is nothing that anybody talks to me about. And this is like a regular part of a woman's life. And then she said, I guess 100 years ago, we weren't, women and men weren't living into these later stages of life. So, maybe 100 years ago, people were interpreting menopause and the change as like, well, this is just how people fall apart at the end of life, because there would often be death soon after. And so the thing that we were talking about, and she tunes into these, she gets them on YouTube mostly, but she said one of the things I really like about your webinars is they seem to be more widely applicable, not just for betrayal trauma, which she's going through, or even relationships in recovery. She said I find myself thinking about these principles with my relationships with everybody, and I thought, yeah, that's how it ought to be with relationships, because relationships are not about one specific point in time or one specific issue. All of you that are here, all of you that are listening or watching later, just think, even if you're tuning in because you're dealing with betrayal trauma or you've betrayed your partner, um, there's other aspects of your relationship, other aspects of your life that do not stop just because betrayal is on the table. They don't even fundamentally change because betrayal is on the table. When I work with couples, it's something that I think is important, not necessarily in the earliest stages of betrayal recovery, but soon after. I think it's really important to reestablish that both of you had a past before you got here that created conflict and needs and even strengths in you that is valid and has to be dealt with. Both of you have a future that you're going towards, whether you've ever thought about it as an individual or as a couple, which, by the way, most couples don't, I think about their future adequately, or talk about it, and that can create problems even outside of betrayal. Um, so shortly after, shortly during the process of stabilizing from betrayal, it's really important to look at these other components that make up a relationship: the past, present, future. Um, so when we're thinking about maturity as it relates to development, one thing that all of these developmental models all have in common is they talk about where we came from, what that may look like in the present moment, and there's a forecast or a prognostication about what the future might look like, what this person can expect from life based on the past, based on how it's dealt with in the present. Which I think is also like that's the nexus of the universe that all relationships live at too. Again, like I said, oh, excuse me, poorly timed sneezing. Relationships live at that nexus of the universe too. The past is always relevant. The past is always present. The current moment is all we have. And where we're lined up, where we're going in the future makes all the difference for what we do in this present moment. So one thing again I want to highlight about maturity in relationships is maturity requires that we handle multiple ideas, multiple needs, multiple people. Maturity requires that we handle complexity simultaneously, which one of the first things we see go out the window in trauma is the brain and the nervous system's ability to handle complexity easily. So you'll often see as a response to trauma or chronic stress, um, you'll see a person's reaction to that be to boil things down, not in the simplification way, like to make it easier. It's more like, I can't compute everything this is. So that's where you can have people who, for example, maybe did not have the worst of childhoods, but there was still trouble there. It was still problems. Um, you may find those people having a difficult time saying anything but childhood was great. My parents were great, which again would be a simplification. You can have loving parents who are great people who messed up, who made mistakes and even made some of the same mistakes again and again. So again, the traumatized brain, the stressed brain doesn't do complexity very well. And part of striving for maturity in relationships is pushing that comfort edge. It's pushing that growth edge. Well, I don't like the implications, or I don't like seeing my family this way, or I don't like thinking about my parents this way. It feels bad. Um, there may be a benefit in pursuing truth over feelings of comfort. I think it's M. Scott Peck who said that mental health is the pursuit of reality at all costs. Um, so if we don't think about our relationships as having a past, present, future, as the people in our that we're in relationship with having a past, present, and future that does not change radically just because they uh, started a relationship with us, or just because we started a new trajectory together. That past doesn't change. Present abilities don't change overnight. Um, it's all mixed together. So all developmental models look at a lifespan, and maturity is being able to properly hold the past, present, and future um, in realistic parameters. Here are some of those parameters I would suggest, and maybe as you're listening along, maybe there's some parameters you have found as well that help you to appropriately hold the past, present, and future together. So the first reality is that we cannot change the past or its impact on me in this place and time. So, and I'll get into this a little bit later. Different attachment styles tend to want to handle the past in different ways. And I would say this is a reality of human existence. The past matters. We are largely built on what happened in the past, whether you look from like a psychoanalytic perspective, a developmental perspective, or even if you look from a quantum physics perspective. Quantum physics is showing that our universe is built on a series of chain reactions. This happened, so then this happened, then this happened, and we can even see on the quantum level that there is no existence outside of relationship. There is no existence outside of reaction to what came before. So you can't get around it. The past matters. And I wouldn't say that the past has to be dealt with or gotten over. The past has to be accepted. There's no changing it. Second parameter is all that exists is this present moment. So while there is a past and there is a future that matters, how we align with the past and the future is only done in this present moment. So it was one of the, especially coming from the sex addiction background that I have as a therapist, as I started learning PACT therapy, and I would hear Stan Tatkin say things like, arguing over the past is not helpful. Don't let your couples argue over the past. And then I think about the whole disclosure process. And I'm like, how do you square this? I mean, the disclosure is all about the past. And as I went layers deeper in PACT and also in my CSAT training, I realized no, disclosure is actually not about the past. The past is dealt with in reference, but what I see hinges a successful disclosure versus a train wreck of a disclosure is how the present moment as this couple is in the room dealing with what has been done, how they handle that present moment is the best prognosticator about whether the disclosure is helpful in the future or not. So disclosure, while honesty and raw data is important, the real power of a disclosure is someone who has wronged, kept secrets, betrayed, coming to a partner in all transparency and care. I need to give you this information so you can get well. That setup is the kind that I see. I see couples struggle with disclosure, but not have to go back and revisit not just data, but even the fact that we had a disclosure when the attitude in the present moment is right. I've worked with a lot of couples who have done disclosures previously to coming to work with me, and the attitude was not right, and it was not watched for with their therapist. And there's stuff to deal with from the disclosure, but it's not the data; it's how the moment was handled. The third parameter I would say is without an idea of the future we want to create, we are left to our impulses in the present moment. So with couples that I work with, be it a parenting issue or being in an issue with each other, if we're not clear what we stand to lose or build together, and we don't believe in it, then all we are is a raw nerve flapping around in this present moment, and it's reaction after reaction after reaction. Why on earth would you not just eviscerate your partner when they make you mad or they hurt you? Well, because you're depending on this person down the road. Because maybe you actually don't want to end the relationship, even though you might want to strangle this person right now. You actually don't want to end the relationship. It's a moment in time versus this is what it's going to be forever. So that clear vision of the future, what it must be, what it could be, what we're bought into making it, is very, very important in the present moment because it dictates how we must act now. Again, it dictates how we must handle the present moment. So if we have a vision of a relationship where we protect each other absolutely and mutually from threats both within and without the relationship. Let's say somebody is having a hard time sleeping for nights on end, and their bandwidth is wearing down. And because their bandwidth is wearing down, they're short, they're impatient, they're rude, which is all things that happen when we don't sleep. With that clear vision of what our relationship must be, when partner A, who has the low bandwidth, is called out by partner B saying, hey, you can't talk to me that way, or that doesn't feel good, or that's not fair. Partner A's allegiance to the future dictates that the only way they can respond is, I'm so sorry, there's not an excuse. Even though I'm tired, my bandwidth is low, even though I'm not functioning very well, I'm not going to bring that to you and say, is this okay? I'm going to say, I'm so sorry. I have to clean it up. Or I need to make sure that I can get sleep now and I can get back in the game. I have to quit running like this because it's hurting you. So the fourth parameter that I would say is the future holds no guarantees, and it is only as strong as our commitment to it is. I was really intentional about the language there. It's not so much a commitment to one another as I see as it's the commitment to our future. Because remember, our feelings about one another can vary. There can be days on end where your partner is annoying you, or there can be days on end where all you can see is the parts of your partner that are not your favorite. And so if the loyalty, if the commitment is to a person, that is too variable. That changes too much. People are terrible. At the same time, I love them. But people are terrible. Ideas, principles, institutions, our relationship, the children we brought into the world, that is a bigger, more steady idea. It's weighted heavier. It's a more solid construction than I like the idea of you. No, I like the idea of what you and I can do together if we're serious about it. So the future holds no guarantees. It's only as strong as our commitment to it is. This comes back to the present moment. The future can be forecast based on how we are handling each other right now in the most stressful of circumstances. So it's not uncommon when I'm working with couples that I will hear the partner who has betrayed saying, I promise I will never again. And those of you who have been in that situation, you know how non-helpful that is after the second or third time. That it's even said, even if the promise is kept, if that's what we're relying on. Because often the body that I hear the words, I'll never do it again, come out of is tense, it's self focused, it's defensive. Again, manner, how we're dealing with each other in this present moment means way more than whatever we're promising each other. So if I'm saying, I promise I will never hurt you again, and I'm doing that in a hurtful way in the present moment, guess who's just undermined all their credibility? So maybe the words that we say, the promises that we make are not as important as if I'm recognizing that my sin against you, my trespass has been I didn't protect you. Well, guess what? I protect you in every moment. Even in these moments where we're having a tough discussion, I don't let my defensiveness fly off the handle, or at least I don't let it do that without a sincere apology, without checking myself, without taking feedback. Um, if I've been uncaring towards you, if I haven't considered your feelings, if I haven't considered the reality it creates for you when I'm not acting with fidelity. Again, I don't think it matters as much what I say to you in the present moment as much as the feeling of, no, I'm here and I'm loyal to you. I'm loyal to our relationship. I won't do anything, regardless of how I feel, that would ever put that in jeopardy again. It's that feeling shift that I see in couples, that handling of the present moment in a different way that really, I think, if you think of a broken bone, the past and the present are not aligned. It's that present moment that encapsulates I'm doing the things that I didn't do in the past that hurt you. And I'm doing the things that we said in the future we need to do. I'm doing that all in this present moment. That's how it lines up, and that's how the fracture heals. Um, so just a quick word on attachment styles, because this kind of maturity, this through line, past, present, and future, like all things, being a human being in relationships, we're not designed to do it well. We're designed to need it, but we are not designed to do it well. It's weird. It's weird how our psyches and our bodies and our nervous systems came together. Um, so when we're talking about attachment styles and their preferences for dealing with the past, there are some through lines that we see. So I'm going to be using the PACT models conceptualization of attachment styles. Um, Again, like we talked about last time, you could go down the rabbit hole, and there are a lot of different ways that attachment is described. So this is by no means universal or final. It's just quick shorthand. So in PACT therapy, we talk about waves, islands, and anchors. So we'll start with anchors. Anchors are what we would consider like securely attached people. It's not anchor is not rigidity. It's more about its firmness. I can have stress. I can have great amounts of stress. I can have low amounts of stress. There's not a giant difference in the presentation you'll see from me. Anchored or anchor people tend to have a stronger sense of self. They tend to have confidence in theirs and others' abilities to resolve conflict because that's what they got growing up. Anchors have little trouble giving the benefit of the doubt, not because they're fools, but because they trust their discernment. So if something smells really, really off, an anchor can say, "Yeah, I'm out. It smells really, really off." If something is unsure but maybe okay, and a more anchored person is willing to give it a shot, they are able to say, I'm not so sure about this, but I'm willing to give it a shot. I know that it may not go well for me, it may not go well for you, but we're trying here. On the other hand, and by the way, I know I've said this before, but no attachment style is pathological. There is not something to be fixed. Just like different, like if you just look at human beings who live at different altitudes and different latitudes or latitudes on the globe, um, there are issues created by that that require adaptation, not genetic re-engineering. Okay, so nothing is pathological about attachment styles. It's important to understand these so that the proper accommodations can be made, the proper room can be created in a relationship to move around. So our wave-ish folks, the technical terminology behind wave would be an angry resistant attachment style, which means when things get really stressful and there's threat to me, you will see more of an active anger and resistance to the sensation, to the dynamic. This doesn't mean that these are angry people. It means my coping mechanism is going to be more of a vocal pushback when I get under stress. So, as far as the past is concerned, with wave-ish people, there is difficulty in flexibility, shifting states quickly or firmly. So, with wave-ish people, you may see on the surface, this is the person who puts on the fake smile and can say, no, everything's fine. They're like, really, it was all right. And inside, they're in a ton of pain. Because planting a flag is difficult for wave-ish people. Planting a flag means if I plant my flag and I stay here, everybody might leave me. So when it comes to the past, it can be hard to move forward if there's anything that feels amiss, if there's anything that could go wrong. A wave-ish person is more going to want to hunker down and focus on the past. Yeah, but you said. Yeah, but you did. And they will over-focus on the past at the cost of what's going on in the present moment. An islandish person, which we would say the technical term behind islandish people is a distancing. So there can still be anger and resistance, but what you'll see on the surface in an islandish person is they will distance, they will isolate, they will move away from stimulus and relationship when they're struggling. They will become a little more self-contained, whereas the wave-ish person will protest more, overtly protest more. So when it comes to the past with islandish people, they would rather that the past not exist because the past carries complication and pain. They would rather move forward. Those of you with islandish partners who have betrayed you, you've probably heard them say things like, well, yeah, but that was in the past. I'm not doing that now. You may hear them say things like, why do we have to keep talking about what happened in the past? I get it. And what that distancing is, it's not necessarily a distancing from a person. It's not necessarily a verdict on whether I like you or not. It's distancing from a feeling. I had a client put it this way the other day. I'm sitting in a puddle of my own shame and lack of integrity and guilt when he looked at how he betrayed his partner. Which is like the hardest thing in the world for an island person to do, is to sit there and to acknowledge, to accept that the past carries unpleasant feelings. So islandish people deal with that by pretending that the past doesn't exist or that it shouldn't be important, or that emotions are a lesser way to deal with things. What is relevant? They want to move forward, and their question is there's nothing relevant in the past. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't help. It just drums up hurt. So again, attachment is like we talked about last week. Essentially, it's learned, but it's learned so early it might as well be biological. So there are ways to help yourself and your non-secure partner and your non-secure self deal with the past, but it's the road around, it's the longer way, it's the slower way. Which, if it's the only way you got, it's a great way to do it. Both attachment styles, non-secure attachment styles, can feel they have the "but I feel" going on right now. Yeah, but I feel that that's not important, or I feel like it's going to throw me down a rabbit hole and I will never come back. I feel like it doesn't do any good. Maturity is being able to function in conjunction with, but ultimately outside of our feelings, meaning the feelings are not driving the bus. They're also not bound and gagged in the trunk and we're pretending like they don't exist. It's a board, it's a partnership around the table. We can hear the feelings, we can feel the feelings, and we can also hear and feel what's at stake. We can hear and feel what we've committed to. We can hear and feel, what the future needs to hold for us. Both attachment styles will struggle with the fact that there are realities, like I laid out the parameters. There's realities about relationships that can't be engineered in any other way. For example, I don't know that I've seen a patently unfair relationship survive and thrive. I've seen them exist for a long period of time, but I have not seen health come out of patently unfair relationships. So I would say that's pretty close to a universal human truth. If a relationship is not fair, it's not going to be a happy one, and it's not going to provide anything of value for the people in it. Just the opposite, it'll take a lot of value from them. Some other realities that have to be dealt with in relationships, and then we'll open up Q&A. Nervous systems must be able to function well in relationships. So there has to be appropriate rhythm between arousal and rest. There has to be visceral safety. The pattern between arousal and rest needs to more closely resemble a gentle rising and falling than sharp left turns. Nervous systems don't do well outside of those parameters. If you don't believe that, just go get a job at a place that thinks that you are replaceable and doesn't care at all about how you feel or how you're functioning. You'll discover very, very quickly where the limits of your nervous system are, and that you can't continue living like that for very long. Another reality, you are individuals. It's not just about what works best for one or the other, or what's easiest for one or the other. In fact, when ease is one of the parameters that couples I work with are looking for, I get nervous. Not because I think it should be hard work, but I think a lot of times when people say, I think relationships should be easy, it means when we have to work hard, we shouldn't be working against each other. We should be working on the problem together hard. And that is, I think, where that sense of ease comes from. It's not a struggle. It's not a political game to get anything done. It's think about like the efficiency of an engine. All the energy goes to moving this forward, or most of the energy goes to moving this forward versus burning off into space and being wasted ultimately. And that dovetails with often the right thing is the hardest thing. Again, if we prioritize our comfort over the functioning of our relationship, don't get me wrong, comfort is important. I don't think everyone should be Spartan in a relationship, but often to make significant, important things happen, there is no way around it. It's just painful and it's uncomfortable. So again, the sum total so far for me in this series is development is past, present, and future. There's no getting away around that. And the takeaway for today is maturity is being able to recognize that and synthesize the three appropriately, utilizing them, learning from them without getting stuck in any one of them.
Great stuff. So, I want to go to often the right thing is the hardest thing. But I think if you are focusing on the moment, in this moment, this might be the hardest thing. But you're also talking about holding the future and going in the moment. If we do this right, if we're willing to get in the weeds with it and do the work, that ultimately, can help with our future. Like, to me, that, if I'm doing this right now, I'm preventing future problems because we've navigated how we're going to do this. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well said, Tammy. It's the in the moment experiences. Wow, this is hard. Is it worth it? Looking back from the future point where you made the hard choice and you did the hard work, is like 100% of the time, like, I'm so glad we decided to do that. I'm so glad that we didn't pick the easy way. Again, if that hardest thing is the right thing, but I appreciate that highlighting. It's in the moment. The right thing often feels hard, but when you look at that longer timeline, oftentimes the right thing is kind of the only thing that makes sense.
Well, and I put PACT, you've mentioned that. That's Dr. Stan Tatkins, and love his work. And you talked about individuals. It's not just about what is best or easiest for one. And I've shared more than any probably other, podcast, Dr. Rob's with Dr. Stan, January of 2019. I know exactly when it was, on We Do. And I often share, in fact, I did earlier this morning too, in a healthy relationship, it's we. If it's always me, 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 like it isn't even healthy for the individual. It's like, sure, maybe it
Yeah.
feels good in the moment, but we are, ideally pair bonded in a healthy relationship, and so it is critically important. And I think it's easy to miss that. It's like, no, I deserve this, or, the whatever, but we're missing out is, if it's only about me, then we aren't going to thrive, and ultimately that isn't even good for me. But again, it's the being able to hold this space for the future, and what do I need to do now that will help us move forward into the future. There was another one I wanted to bring up. Um uh, the promise I will never hurt you again. And I was just like, the only way I could promise I would never hurt somebody ever again is if I was never interacting with another person on the planet. I mean, I'm a human being, and it's not intentional that, like, I'm gonna go get them, but I do stuff, and I need to make amends, and clean it up. But I was just like, yeah, that's such a red flag.
So again, Tammy, you're right. I have to add another parameter to a reality of a relationship. If you're in a relationship with a human being, they're going to suck because we're awful um, some of the time.
Yeah.
We do terrible things some of the time. And if you're throwing in with somebody long term, you are going to run into the ways that they suck, the way that they're hurtful, the way that they're not great. And so I have worked with couples before that have had such a brittle nature because they're so afraid of that part of it that when they do hurt each other, they can't even acknowledge it because it's like the worst thing that they could, or when they're less than fantastic, they can't even acknowledge it because that's the worst thing that could happen is that I'm human. And so it's not that in a secure functioning relationship, we have to build room for allowances and we just, turn a blind eye. But again, we make room for disruption. We make room for apology. We make room for, maybe I don't see it right away. And I have to work on that because we're human and that's how it works.
Well, and you know what? If I'm only pointing my finger at my partner or the other people in my relationship, guess what I'm not paying any attention to is, what am I doing that could be causing disruption in relationships too? None of this stuff happens in a vacuum. And I really appreciated when you're talking, and you're right, your webinars, we are talking about things that are really universal for relationships. Yes, we're often talking about in a paired relationship, but all of these principles are
Yeah.
how we navigate life in the real world, whether it's family, kids, parents, whatever, or, work colleagues or friends or whatever, the more we're able to integrate these tools into our relationships, the healthier relationships we can have.
Yeah, definitely.
And I did love that you I noted it too with the disclosure, because I get so many people that are like, when as soon as we have disclosure, like then we can close the door on all that past, and it's all of that. And they're really just and focused on all of that stuff and knowing all of that stuff. But I really love what you're talking about of like, I'm showing up in the present with that stuff, taking accountability with a lens towards the future. And I was like, wow, that's such a powerful framework of what really is the goal. And I often say it's setting a foundation for moving forward. But I just had that vision of like, you're taking the past, you're in the present, but with a vision towards the future for and I feel like that would be, something that could set people up, for success in why I'm showing up in the present. It's not just about, getting over that ucky stuff. And I have one, I know we've got a couple questions, but I had one more on the islands and waves. And you're talking about that, and it would be fascinating to me, and I'm sure there's no research, but our is one of them more likely, to be the betrayer? Are they more likely to be in pair bonds, with the opposites? Like all of that is just fascinating to me.
I can answer the betrayal part.
Okay.
I see all sorts of different pairings. The classic is you have a wave and islandish person, which happens a lot, but all permutations also happen a lot. Um, but the betraying, it's not a matter is one more prone to betray, it's how are they prone to betray. So
Oh,
what we'll see with islandish people are what we call auto regulators. Islandish people are more likely to use pornography. They're more likely to keep secrets. They're more likely to, if they're going to betray, it will be a solo activity.
okay.
Wavish people, you might get more of the love addict or the relationship addict. Um, with an islandish person, you might have more of the power centric sex addict who's paying for a lot of sex. It's not real relationship. And for the wavish person, it would be like, the affairs and the liaisons that I'm always on the edge of my life getting blown up because a spurned lover is angry with me. So we'll see with wavish folks, their betrayal um, tends to follow their attachment style, just like with islandish folks.
Oh, fascinating. There's so much, like, it's just interesting to me, and
Yeah,
there's so much research to do too. So,
we did have a leftover question from
oh,
last. If I can start there.
yes, please do. Yeah.
There were two that we didn't get to, but the second one I couldn't see a question in it. So
Okay.
it
Then just
was,
go with the first.
yeah, it made sense in the moment. It wouldn't make sense today. So can you share more thoughts about dishonesty in recovery? My porn/fantasy addicted enmeshed and ADHD partner is unwilling or unable to comprehend how destabilizing his secrets and lies are. At 56, he still consistently does what he wants, and then he cries, clings, and follows when his covert behaviors are discovered. I maintain that without rigorous honesty, we have no foundation on which to heal our relationship. So if you submitted this question and you are watching, go grab your partner, bring him here. I'll wait. No, you can pause it. Bring him here. And there's a couple things I have to say about these realities in relationship. So when it comes to secure functioning in a relationship, if you would like to have a secret life that your partner is not affected by or upset about, find someone who doesn't care if you keep secrets. Find someone who doesn't want to share a life with you. Find someone who doesn't want to depend on you. Now, I'm not saying go leave. I'm saying that's what it would take for your lies and secrets to not impact your partner. Is you would have to have a partner who says, "Oh yeah, I know you're going to lie to me and keep secrets, and I'm going to do the same to you, and you better mind your own business." Um, when it comes to what is a problem in a relationship, there is not some golden book. There is not a judge from on high who says, "Oh, that would be a problem. Nope, that shouldn't be a problem." If it comes out of your partner's mouth, "Hey, this is a problem for me," then it's a problem. It's not about good, bad, right, or wrong. It's about um, if the person you are with is not thriving under what you are or are not willing to do, you have to take a look at that if you want to be with that person in an ethical way. Um, so with that, when the person who puts it here, when they say it's destabilizing, when they say there's the cries, clings, and follows response to infidelity or secrets being discovered. Again, I would say to the person in this situation, again, with all respect and honesty, maybe you're not a serious enough person to have a good relationship. Maybe you need to grow up. Um, I worked with a guy a few years ago who was having some of the same attitudes in his relationship, and I asked him to read Wired for Love, which is one of Stan's books, not his most recent, but um, I asked him to read it, and his takeaway was, yeah, I don't think I'm interested in a relationship that works that way. And what was able to come out of that is he was recognizing that he was keeping his spouse like a pet, poorly cared for. And he was able to start looking at that, and the fundamental way he wanted to be in a relationship didn't change, but his accountability for that did. And he could say things to his wife like, "I know that this is really important for you, and I'm not interested. And maybe I don't know where their story ended, but when he ended with me, they were talking in terms of maybe this relationship is not the best idea for the two of us. And instead of that being a looming threat and a tug of war, they were actually looking like they could work collaboratively, and that they could open up space and room for both to be happier than they could be under those circumstances. So I bring that up to say, if you have a modicum of entitlement when it comes to relationships, you're not ready for one, and you're going to do damage. So if you have a preference that it must be a certain way, find someone who agrees with you. Release other people from the misery of having to be attached to you because you want to do what you want to do. You don't care really how it impacts them. In the beginning here, when they said unwilling slash unable, I would strike unable when it comes to relationships. There's no such thing as unable, I would say, unless you have a traumatic brain injury and like that part of your brain is not there. Um, Most often, when I see couples who are struggling to do something that they should or that is healthy, it's a matter of I don't think I should have to, not I don't want to, or not I don't know how. It's I don't want to. I don't think I should have to, because the truth is, if this relationship really matters to you, and you want it to matter to your partner too, and you want it to be good for both of you, you figure out how to do what you have to do. I mean, that's the earmark of almost every part of a relationship. As it develops, we don't start with what we need, but we figure out how to get it. We figure out how to do it, and that's the power of a union that's working together. So um, I hope whoever asked this question, I hope you're able to bring your partner here and you can understand, both of you can understand what I'm saying. Um, it doesn't do anybody good to drag your feet on making a happy relationship. Not at all. It doesn't.
Well, and to your point, if they'd had the conversation before they ever partnered and said, this is what I'm going to do. Is that all good with you? And this other person, under no duress or, any kind of pressure, said, yes, please, have at it. That's a completely different thing. But if there
Yeah.
are, there is an assumption by agreement of, wedding vows or whatever of that, this is our primary monogamous relationship, whatever it is, then yeah, having a whole secret life, somebody is in a relationship that they didn't agree to, and that's the challenge. And Dr. Rob says it too in Out of the Doghouse. It's like you can have that relationship, but you can't be in a relationship with this person. The one that you're married to didn't sign up for that. So if you want to go have transactional sex and do all of those things, that is a choice, but not if you want to be in a relationship with the person that you've partnered with. So challenging stuff. Okay, so the first question is, I've noticed that many partners are many betrayers, I'm sorry, many betrayers are mother enmeshed. Any idea why that might be? And you know what he does?
Yes. So first, though, I have to address what many means. Um,
Okay, sure.
Dr. Adams and I talk about this a lot. We're very grateful to the ITAP and the CSAT community, which was like the first nest, first incubator for mother enmeshment. That's where Dr. Adams started to see mother enmeshment as he worked with folks struggling with addiction and struggling to get sober. Many does not mean all. Correlation does not mean causation. I would say it's not uncommon to have someone who is mother enmeshed who also sexually betrays, because a secret sexual life is a perceived escape from obligation, guilt, the pressures of a relationship, which um, legitimately, I think folks who are legitimately enmeshed with their mothers, there is a trauma there. There is a developmental trauma there. The lack of individuation and personhood, which was precipitated by the mother not being able to tolerate that happening, prevents somebody from saying, hey, this isn't working, or I'm stressed, or I'm not happy, or something has to change, which is how a non-addicted person deals with stress in their life. They speak about it, they make changes, they upset the apple cart if that needs to happen. And mesh folks have a hard time with that. So the first, like, why that might be is it's a perceived means of escape. In our workshops, the over 1,000 men now who have been through our workshops, only about 50% are sexually addicted or have intimately betrayed.
Hmm.
So mother enmeshment can exist outside of that betrayal dynamic. Not everybody who is enmeshed will betray sexually. For others, it might look more like a shutdown in sexuality. They're just not. They can't own or express their own sexuality in any way, shape, or form. Um, so there's the side of perceived escape. Another reason why I think you may see that a lot of betrayers are mother enmeshed is um, I like how Gabor Mate puts it. He says addiction is not a problem; it's a solution. Um, one thing that I think is really clear, a difference between sexual addiction and like substance abuse or dependency, is there is always a primary attachment wound with someone who is addicted to sex or porn, like always. Um, this may be controversial in this crowd, I don't know, but I don't think that porn or sex are inherently addictive like drugs and alcohol are. Um, Even with that, we see often with drugs and alcohol, there are some folks who do become addicted because they use a lot. More often, we'll see folks become addicted because there's an emotional pain that needs medicating, which is often attachment related too. All of that to say, with sex addiction, there is often a significant story with their primary attachment, their mother, their father, their family of origin. Um, and so a lot of times, the mother enmeshment chord, hey, there's something here with mom that strikes a lot, but not all family of origin issues are enmeshment issues with addicted folks either. So, short answer to this question is yes, I think there is something to be observed there, but it is not a strict everyone with family of origin issues is mother enmeshed, or everyone with mother issues is mother enmeshed. It's a really particular subset. Just like when we're looking at addiction, not everyone who betrays is addicted to sex. Not everyone who is addicted to porn is addicted to sex. There are these kind of silos, and the differentiation in diagnosis is key to successful treatment. So it's a really interesting place to start an inquiry, and when you do, you start to see like, oh, there's all sorts of different shades of this. But yeah, I would agree. It's not a it's not an occasional theme that we see issues with the family of origin and sexual addiction or betrayal.
Well, and you're speaking to the complexity of these issues and why having trained, qualified help, rather than a generalist therapist, we see a higher correlation of ADHD. And, I mean, like, yeah, there's some
Yeah,
things that correlate, that it doesn't mean, oh, I have ADHD, so I'm an addict, or
yeah,
vice versa, but yeah, there's correlations. But even I was thinking about with this question, it's like the islands and the waves, because you said, porn addicts can be in a silo, and yeah, and we see that, and separately, with those that have co-occurring substances. If somebody's choosing stimulants over opiates, there's a difference in their behaviors, there's a difference in the underneath. And you know what, our clinical team understands those things, and so can help unpack all of those things. So but I think it's really important to to understand is that there's no global everything. It's like, and you're right too, that this does not exist in a vacuum. There's always stuff underneath, and being able to attend to that, when there's stability, makes, well, can put somebody on a recovery path. Okay, betrayed here. My understanding of the weight loss, appetite loss, and insomnia I experienced in the wake of D-Day was because my partner was my primary attachment figure, and my CNS viewed betrayal as a central nervous system. Okay, I got it. So many alphabet things. I had to think about that one for a second. I've heard people say that the porn, sex, alcohol, etc., became their higher power while active in addiction. Have addicts developed primary attachments with their drug behavior of choice instead of their significant other, or they just not have a primary attachment figure at all? Oh, that's a complex and interesting question. I like it.
yeah. I mean, the short answer is yes. And here's why that's damning, not from a moral perspective, but attachment. Um, requires giving back. Cameron, you know Carver Brown.
Yes.
He put it this way: who would have known that cocaine and alcohol were not a nurturing mother?
Yeah.
Like, so when we look at attachment and why we attach, being able to escape difficulty, being able to escape stress is only part of the attachment need. And with addictive substances or behaviors that become addictive, the problem is the pursuit of escape, just that little piece of our attachment needs, it becomes all consuming. So another thing that we need from attachment is we need to see the faces and hear the voices of other human beings, specifically as they attune to us. I always go back to it, when I think about that, I go back to the Romanian orphanages in the 80s and the 90s, where there was adequate shelter, food, warmth given, but there was not interaction, and you had kids dying in their cribs because they were not held, they were not looked at, they were not talked to. There was a failure to thrive. That's another part of the attachment need. Is there has to be real reciprocation, not just imagined reciprocation. Our nervous systems can't get by on that. Um, so yes, I would say it's true. You could look at it as the primary attachment is with the drug or the behavior of choice. Sometimes you'll see that as to the second part here. Do they not have a primary attachment figure at all? Sometimes when sex or porn or alcohol or drugs come on the scene, the nervous system is saying, "Hallelujah! There's something here I can anchor to." That's the person who never had real primary attachment. Other times you can see from someone who their caregiver was underdeveloped, therefore they're underdeveloped. There are some inklings of primary attachments, but it's so complicated and so hard every step of the way that the person essentially comes to the conclusion, I'm better off on my own. So I can have attachment, I can have family, I can even have someone who comforts me, but it comes at a price. And it's a price I get sick of paying. So I think the core of this question here is the fact that in addiction, attachment and security gets we put it on one-dimensional objects or one-dimensional experiences, meaning it can only do one thing. It can make us feel better now, but there's no security, there's no future, there's no limerence, there's no validation, there's no recognition there, which is also huge benefits that we get from attachment.
Okay, so the next one. Oh my gosh, the entitlement, and I shouldn't have to mentality of my PASA appears to be why he's made no significant progress with his recovery. It's always the same excuses. He can't feel empathy, doesn't know how to listen, doesn't have coping skills, is overwhelmed by the thought of the work, it's too scared, etc. Your statement, if you want the relationship, you figure out what you have to do. Thank you and amen, John. He needs to hop on the recovery train soon. I'm going to have to move on. So, you know what? We have lots of guys who maybe stop the problematic behavior, so are in abstinence, but like stuck like this, come to our residential treatment program because it's unpacking all of that and they're with peers. That does move, that does move the guys forward. So
No.
14, 21, or 28-day length of stay to really unpack all of those things, and get through I'm going to just say the BS of all of those, the lips are moving messages that you're getting. So, but, and for you, betrayed partner, we have a Thursday afternoon betrayed partner moving on alone. It is a different drop-in group. The focus is not on how do we fix the relationship. It is I'm moving on. I've been left. I've got one foot out the door. So and you don't have to have committed, so that may be someplace to check. And one more, we did a series of, and I wrote a blog about it about, should I stay or should I go? Lots of people get stuck in that. I don't even know. And just having that, that series has been really helpful for people too. Always happy to share, the links to that as well. So thoughts on this?
Yeah, just one thing I want to say. It comes down to I don't think I should have to. That's the attitude that has to be watched for. Now, in all seriousness, there are things like empathy, listening, and coping skills that people don't know how to do because they weren't taught. There is a world of difference between I know I need to be able to do this. I know this is important. I know our relationship doesn't work with this, and I am struggling so hard to make that happen on a consistent basis. But I know that's on me. I know I have to figure that out. A partner's reaction to that versus someone who downplays their ultimate sense of failure, I think, and inadequacy with, I just don't think it's important. That gets very little patience and empathy and like, hey, thank you for working on this. So if you're in active recovery and you're wondering why you don't get support from your partner, there could be a lot of reasons, but the first place I would check is what's your attitude? Do you realize what you have to do in recovery is a have to for your relationship, for your happiness? You can struggle, but if you realize it's a have to, your attitude and your bearing might be pretty different, and you might get a different response from your partner. If it's that entitled, well, if I'm not good at it, it must not be important. Um, no wonder why you might have a partner who's getting fed up with you and has a hard time being patient and understanding.
Well, until you have to. I have to if I want this relationship. I don't have to, but then I'm gonna lose my partner. So, because
Yeah.
I always like to have choices. So, um, when do you post these sessions? This will I send I want to take notes on the parameters. Thank you 1,000 times for your work. You're helping me heal. This I'm going to send. I get the notice shortly. I'm going to send it. I will nudge the person and puts it up and make sure that it gets put up yet this afternoon. So there's a whole library of lots of great Jon webinars, lots of years of them. So check all those out as well. And we're going to get cut off. So I'm going to say goodbye. Thank you all for
Thanks,
joining. Thanks,
everybody.
Jon. Another great topic, and I appreciate it.
Thank
Bye.
you.